Welcome to the RevRoom. I'm your host, Rachel Bryant. Join me each episode as we discuss the strategies of top marketing practitioners, uncovering the tactics that transform ideas into revenue. Whether you're a seasoned marketer or an aspiring leader, the RevRoom is your go-to source for actionable advice and industry trends. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and enjoy this episode. This is episode number 2 of our time with Kerry Cunningham, and we're talking about all the practical applications to his B2B buying journey research that we talked about in the first part of this series. So go back and listen to the first episode with Kerry. Make sure you listen to that because that'll give you some context and insight of what we're talking about here in episode number 2. If you've already listened, great. Thank you so much. And we're excited to share some really practical applications with you as we change the playbook for B2B marketing. Let's transition a little bit, Kerry, to okay, all of this is really great information.
Yeah.
Absorbing it. What do I do about it now? As a marketer, how do I think about the new playbook I need to start to work towards to try to make sure that we're in the game or we're elevating our brand to be that preferred vendor? How do we start to think about how we do things a little differently in marketing and in sales as well to be able to adjust to this buy, the way buyers buy?
Yeah. So I'll break it down in a couple of different buckets. And this from conversations I've been having with lots of marketers about this. So if you're a big brand in your space, if you're, so 6 Sense in the ABM platform space, right? If you're in market for an ABM platform or something even remotely like it, you know who 6 Sense is, and you know what 6 Sense does. We may or may not be on the top of your list, but you know. So if you're Cisco and a company is looking to buy network infrastructure, Cisco's on the list. Yep. You're just going to be on the day one list. Again, you may not be the preferred vendor. You may be, but you're going to be on the list. If you're not a big brand in your space, if you're a newer player in the space, you may or may not be on that first, on the day one short list. So I think there's a couple of ways you have to look at it. So if you are a big brand in your space, you're probably already on the day one short list, but your job then is to ensure that being on the day one short list, you're driving preference to be at the top of the day one short list all the time. And the more preference you can drive, the higher prices you can charge, right? So if, that is kind of the price insurance. If you can not only be the one that's associated with it and get it on the list, but also one that your buyers are going to fight to be able to buy. And so, I think where you are a big brand and you're confident you're on that day one list, I think you've got to see the very beginning of all of those buying journeys so that you can prioritize more of your demand, what's thought of as demand gen, really more demand capture spend at this point at that set of companies. And so this is a little different advice than what I would have given a couple of years ago. It's different advice than what 6 Sense would have said even a year ago, because we would have said, well, maybe you don't overinvest in those early stage buying processes because a lot of those are not going to go anywhere. They're not going to finish in a purchase.
Yeah. And why spend your money there, right? If it's not generating what you wanted to. Yep.
But now I think the advice is, you need to make a better impression at that stage, because that's, your buyers are starting to decide at that point which vendor they want to buy from. And so you've got to look at your own budget and what you can do. But by the time you get to months 3, 4, 5 of that buying process, if it's 11 months long, a lot of the decisioning has already happened. A lot of the way vendors think about your brand is already happening. So I think you want to make very good early impressions, provide experiences, provide content that your buyers will value. They're not going to talk to you. Again, unless you have an AE in there who's got a good relationship, they're still probably not going to talk to you, but you have to be delivering value. You're auditioning now for a role as their partner. And so being there, and making it not about you, but making it about your buyer and enabling them. I think you have to do more of that than we would have said early on. The way that you can get the budget to do that is by not spending all of your demand budget on the 95% of accounts that are not in market. So for me, that's why I started with that when we started the conversation. It's like, you got to know which accounts those are so that you're not driving your expensive, high touch, low scale tactics at those accounts, because it's not going to go anywhere, right? If they're strategic accounts, your A's are going to be in there and you're going to do stuff for them anyway. But, in the enterprise mid-market on down, we're going to have to find some money to do some substantial brand and reputation work there. But we don't want to do our demand capture stuff there because it's just going to be a waste of time and money. So don't do that, but spend more on those very early stage when we see, early stage intent signals tell us they're out in market. When we have the first kind of anonymous traffic surge on your website, you want to respond to that and make sure that they know that you love them and you're going to enable them and make their buying journey pleasant and easy if that's what they're going to be. So I think that's really important. To be able to do any of that, I think one of the things you have to do is, for most organizations, you still have to convince people who are not on the ground marketers every day that your buyer is a big group of people and the lead is not the right signal. Most organizations still have to convince the non-everyday marketing soldiers of that. And for me, the best way to do that is to just look at the data that you already have to start with. So if you go into your leads data, what you will find is that if you have 1,000 leads, you probably have something like 600 to 700 accounts represented in those leads. Take out the junk, all of that stuff, even just the real leads that have real domains on them. So, your lead conversion rate is based on the idea that every lead represents a unique selling opportunity. But when you look at that data, the first thing that strikes you is, no, that's not even close to the case, right? Some accounts you've got 2 leads, 3 leads, 4, 5, even more sometimes. Particularly if you've had a webinar, it's a great webinar, you may have 4 or 5 people from an account, right? Most organizations still do not notice when that's happened, or they look at it as 5 duplicate leads. Folks, what that is a buying group demonstrating an intense amount of interest in your stuff. So that's a signal we really, so don't care about your MQLs, but if you see 5 people or 4 people from the same organization looking at the same thing, everybody in the company should be, that's, your little bells should go off and alarms should go off and we should be paying attention to that account. So look at the data and understand what that looks like for your organization today. Do you see buying groups demonstrating interest coming from certain accounts? Typically what you'll find is that less than a half of the accounts that are represented in your data have multiple people. But that those accounts where you had multiple people, those are the accounts likely where you got business from in the past. And what you often will see is that there's a correlation between how much interest is being shown by an account and their likelihood of becoming an opportunity for your pipeline. So that's just with the leads data. For every lead that you have from an account that's in market, you probably have 4 or 5 people from that account who've been on your website anonymously at the same time. So, and that data comes from the fact that just 2 out of 10 people from a buying group will fill out a form. That's what buyers say. Did you fill out a form? About 2 out of 10 people say yes. 5 out of 10 people say that they reached out to proactively ask a question of a vendor during their buying process. Only 2 filled out a form. Right. So again, then I'm not going to fill out your forms. They know what happens when they do that. But if they have a question, they'll come find you. So you've got two people who fill out a form, 8 that don't. That's very typical ratio. If your buying group is 20, you may have 3, 4, 5 people who fill out a form, but you're going to have 15, 16, 17 people who didn't fill out the form, but they're on there anonymously. And today you can resolve between a half and 70 or so percent of those contacts back to the account that they came from. So, you can vastly improve your knowledge of which accounts are really in market for you by looking at all of those signals. And again, the best thing to do is to say, okay, from an account, how many leads did we have? How much anonymous traffic did we have? And then if we had more of those two things together, did that lead to getting more likely getting a pipeline deal, et cetera, later on? That's what we got to do to build the case and to show people, because what we're going to tell people, look, I don't want you to hold me accountable to MQL conversions or production or any of that stuff. I want to ungate everything. So if you're going to tell people that and ask people that, you have to be able to say, well, why is that? Show me the evidence that what you're talking about isn't crazy. And the evidence is in what I just talked about, that the way to really identify which buyers are in market is to see how many people from those accounts are coming to my website and looking at our stuff, and to tie that to the results. And then, if you have anonymous traffic, if you're de-anonymizing your anonymous traffic already, you could look back longer windows in time to see, what does that arc of traffic look like over the course of months? When we build a predictive model of what a buying process looks like, that's what we're doing. We're looking back at, your website traffic plus third-party intent to say, what does it look like over the 6, 8, 9 months leading up to the time an opportunity is created? What does all of that activity look like? Right. And that's how long those processes take. There is this long arc of activity. And you can tell by looking at the arc of activity from some accounts, this one's on its path to becoming an opportunity and this one's not. This level of activity from this kind of account is not a buying process. And that might be, for big solutions, if you sell really expensive stuff, it could be that having 2 people on your website who became MQLs in a month is not meaningful at all. That's going to happen every month, and whether they're in market or not. And what you really need is 5 people. And if you see 5, now that's a big thing.
So we've talked that's really good stuff, Kerry, because what you're talking about is like, how do we measure this new world? So one thing I want to talk about is, what does the new playbook then look like? And then how do you measure that? And like, how do you balance the investment in brand and sort of the up funnel, out of market pieces versus that capture of demand? And then, and then what are we talking about from a metrics perspective? How does that impact what we talk about to our leadership?
So I think, one, I think the basics are, I've got this thing we published called the 3 principles. I shouldn't have said they are 3 principles. They're probably more than 3, but one is you've got to agree, and this is not a new part of a playbook. This is an old one, but you've got to agree with sales on the set of accounts from which you think you're going to get your business over the next 12 months at least, right? What's that set of accounts? And who's going to be doing what? But you also have to now, I think the most important thing you can do next is, one, understand what does that buying group and buying process look like for, say, you do this for one solution in your company. And you can use our research to understand what that looks like generally. We have it broken down by industry, by solution size. So you can go, you use that's what it's there for, is to use the research to get people inside your organization to have a common understanding of what it looks like when your buyer is buying. How long does it take? How many people are involved? All of that is necessary for people to buy into the rest of what this playbook is. Because this playbook begins then with the concept that if you picked 1,000 accounts, 900 of them to 950 of them are not going to be buying from us this quarter, and next quarter the same, and next quarter the same, right? And when you understand most accounts are not in market and your buying process is, let's just use the average of 11 months long, then you start to now understand, like, our job here is, one, understand which ones are in market, detect that as early as possible. So if I know it's 11 months long and I can detect it in month one, I know what I'm dealing with. And I'm not trying to convert that account into a customer in month 3 or 4. That's not going to happen, right? But what I am trying to do is make sure I'm using my budget in marketing and sales, if it's a big enough account, to build preference, to develop relationships, to become, position yourself as a brand that they want to do business with, beginning from the very beginning of that buying journey. And so all of marketing's tactics should be aligned to which accounts are in a buying journey, which accounts are not. The ones that are in a buying journey, the small fragment, they're going to get that's the demand and the ABX budget. Most of it's going to that very small set of accounts. So now we're going to concentrate that budget on a much smaller set of accounts. So again, to get there, you will have had to do the thing I was just talking about earlier, right? If that's a bet that you're going to have to be making as a company. You're going to have to be convincing people of this, and that's what the research is for. So the playbook so far: identify the right accounts, make sure everybody's on the same page about buying groups, buying journey. This is what it looks like. Understanding which accounts are in market, so using the tools that are available, intent and all of that, to understand which are in market, and then orienting all of your early stage marketing tactics around buyer enablement and developing a relationship, developing preference for your brand as a brand that adds value to the buyer and not one that just hounds them for solutions. So examples of that, and we have a lot of examples that we use 6 Sense a lot just as an example. But when they're early stage in the buying process, ensuring that they don't have to come find that really cool thing that you have that will help them, your buyer's guide or something like that. Get it to them, right? Don't make them come fill out a form. Deliver it to them, right? And when you have experiences, if you've got things like, and we do this a lot. I have the good fortune of doing wine tasting or two at least every quarter. The virtual wine tastings, whatever it might be, when we have big enough accounts, they're out in market now. We want to develop relationships with them, but we don't know the decision makers in that account. We don't invite them to a pitch. We invite them to a wine tasting. People will do a wine tasting, right? We send the bottles of wine, and they're in a group setting. It's safe. They know they're not going to get a one-on-one pitch. So they'll come to the wine tasting. We get to know who they are. We get to have some interaction with them. They have now associated us with a brand that they like, that they get something from. They get a chance to network. So there are lots of different ways to do that. If it's not, wine tasting, like a less expensive thing is to have a subject matter expert in a topic, just put on a seminar or something like that, whatever it might be. Even just hosting roundtables, lots and lots of things that develop community in the practitioners that you serve are very effective. I think everybody wants to have a chance to interact with their peers and those kinds of things. Those are not super expensive things. They can be resource heavy to get going. But they're a way that allows you to engage your buyers and to actually develop a relationship that can get you out of the overall B2B buying pattern where you don't get to engage. Mind you still may not pitch until much, much later, but you may not have to by that time, right? The goal is actually, maybe we don't have to pitch to get them to prefer us. They prefer us because they've had that experience of us as a brand. So it's concentrating more of that demand, resource and energy on this much smaller set, now doing it earlier in the buying journey than we would have said before, but detecting that early. I think it's probably not a great use of human beings to be following up with people who do happen to fill out forms and go to webinars. Like if what you're delivering are content and those kinds of things, then I think the bots can do that effectively now and free up budget and free up those people to work on the if you have segments that are bigger accounts, bigger people, to really use those folks there. And then, when we think about what we're going to, and then we're going to spend a little more on brand and reputation to make sure that of those accounts that are not in market, that they are getting an experience of your brand and not just an ad. So, and I think that's another thing, if I toot our own horn, that we do very well. It's make sure that your brand, for whatever that means in your industry and your business, that your brand is associated with being a key part of that industry, right? Just like you're an important part of the ecosystem in that industry. Companies are doing a lot just with their LinkedIn presence or wherever that happens for your business, but making yourself just a core participant in that ecosystem is a way to do that. Subject matter experts, all kinds of folks like that can help you do that. And then when it comes to measuring, now, the thing that we're measuring is, first of all, how many accounts are actually in market. If we look at intent data and we understand, all right, here's out of the 1,000 accounts that we care about, it looks like 75 of them appear to be some kind of in market in this quarter. How many of them are engaging with us? And to what level are they engaging with us? So this goes back, we designed the demand unit waterfall at Serious Decisions, was actually based on this exact concept. It's agree on the accounts, understand which are in market, measure how many of those are engaging with you and to what extent. And so Ross Graber back at Forrester talks a lot about this now, but we want to know whether marketing is driving sufficient engagement within those accounts to capture the preference of that brand. So if this month you're getting an average of 2 people from each one of those accounts that's in market to come to your website and look at your stuff, next quarter, maybe we want 4, right? Yep. And look at the relationship between 2, 4 and results downstream.
I actually have a client who calls it meaningful engagement, and they've created their own sort of metric around it. So they have Sixth Sense and they have that data that Sixth Sense is showing them about engagement, but they also then include other data like their Marketo data and, Salesforce interactions or sales interactions through Salesforce. They've sort of created this proprietary, meaningful engagement metric that they measure, and it has shown them a lot more. And it's central to their business and their market. To your point, right?
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be an out of the box sort of measurement, right? We should be looking at it with the lens of what our market looks like and what our customers look like.
Yeah, exactly right. I love that meaningful engagement. I think it will be different for every brand, but I'd say the key principles underneath that are volume of activity from an account relative to baseline is probably the key thing to be thinking about. Like if you are a decent sized brand in your space, you'll have some activity from all of the accounts you're interested in all the time. Yep. Hopefully, right? At least some anonymous traffic from those accounts. What we look at in the platform, the way we do predictive is like, when does that level of engagement change? And when is it meaningfully different from what it normally is? And that's what we care about. So that's, if we see that the account is out there and they're engaged, they're behaving online differently from the way they normally do, and it looks like they're in market. Now, how well are we capturing their attention? Right. And then what difference does having captured their attention make? So to me, those are really the ways that marketing should be thinking about and be measured. It's we talk about this in the consumer world, but it's an attention economy. And when your audience is in market, your job as a marketer is to capture their attention and to do it in a positive way. So to capture their attention and then really start to measure the relationship between attention, how much engagement are we getting, and the outcomes that we want to produce. Because, you are there to produce better outcomes for sales. That's what marketing's job is in B2B. And so that's absolutely measurable. But we just, the big thing is just thinking past the lead, and thinking past this idea that I do something today and I have this outcome tomorrow that I wanted to produce. That's the difficulty that we have to get by. We have to, the outcome you're getting today is the thing you did 6 months ago. And that we have to be able to show over time. Like you can sort of see it with Sixth Sense. We're going to be doing a better job of helping measure that, but that's what everybody has to be able to do, is measure this lagging effect that marketing has that causes that or improves the results that sales has today.
Yeah. So if I'm a campaign owner, campaign manager, VP of demand even, and I'm listening to this is like really insightful information, and like, okay, there's some good ideas there about how we change the way we actually do our go-to-market activities. Kerry, how do I tell my CMO or my boss, like, hey, we got to think about this differently. What do I
Yeah.
do? Like, I mean,
Well,
obviously you could
yeah.
go point them to your research, but like, where do I start?
Yeah. So one, I think that's not a bad place to start. Having listened to this podcast, you've got to put together the case in the language your leadership will understand about. One, I think as a marketer, you have to demonstrate that you have the best understanding of what buyers are like for your company. So if I'm that person, that's what I want to demonstrate, is that I have the best understanding of what it's like to be a buyer for us right now. How many people are involved? How much engagement is there over how long a period of time? When do they typically really talk to sales? Yeah, you need to have that in data. You need to be able to show. So you can start with our research, because our research says this is what it looks like across the board. And who knows, maybe your leadership would say, okay, that's probably what it's like for us. But then you've got to probably look in your own data. At least, if you've got leads, go show them what the leads data look like. It's not one lead, one selling opportunity. What's that ratio? Where are the accounts where you've had multiple leads, and, you've got to put that case together so that you're building the credibility about this. The first thing we have to do is make it clear that the way that we've been doing this and the way that we've been measuring it does not make any sense. And it's not aligned to what we're trying to accomplish. And that's the MQL thing. And it's easy as hell to knock that down. It doesn't make any sense. And the minute you shine the light on it, it's like, okay, it really doesn't make sense. So you got to shine the light on it. Use the research, use your own data, shine a light on it. That doesn't make any sense. Here's the thing that does make sense: long journeys, big groups, lots of signals, very small percentage of accounts in market in any given time. So our job is not marketing is going to run a campaign this quarter and cause buyers. Marketing is going to run a campaign this quarter to capture the buyers that it caused with the campaign, that other campaigns and things that it did 6, 8, 9 months ago. And all of those elements have to be there, but I think, well, hopefully that helps.
No, I think for certain. One addition to that new playbook that we were talking about and the way we go to market and think about it as marketers is, I think about the partner ecosystem and, being able to really utilize that and influence the brand affinity through your partner ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about that, as well as in addition to some of the other things we've talked about already?
Well, it's obviously really important. It depends where you sit in your ecosystem. Are you at the hub of an ecosystem of things, or are you one of the spokes on the wheel? So it depends a little bit on that. But understanding how you fit into that scope, I think, is really important. We have we get a lot of business with and for our partners. And in some sense, for some, we are the hub, and for some, we're the kind of one of the spokes. So I think understanding how that works, but then engaging really deeply with them, because like even with our research now, we're working to get all of you all, our partners, especially agency partners, engaged in because you're the ones who help solve the problems that we're, I'm mostly pointing out what the problem is. Like here's the
Yeah.
deal. Um, and it's you all that have the solutions to those. Um, and that's true, with our solution as well. We don't solve every problem, and a lot of our partners actually solve maybe the one or two critical problems. They have our solution already, but they don't have all of the problems they need to get solved. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're, engaging there and understanding that and making sure you know your role. You just see a lot of companies kind of putting themselves in the hub position in the kind of ecosystem, where maybe that creates a little confusion for buyers about where, kind of where your solution actually fits. So
Yeah. It does, to me, really stresses the importance of having a strong partner marketing function and strategy. Maybe it's not a function, but
Mhm.
maybe just having that strategy of understanding how you can how your partners are influencing your brand and even talking about you when you're not around.
Yeah, for
Whether
sure.
whether that's a customer or prospects in a buying cycle or
That's a great
not,
point.
you're starting to build
Yeah, yeah.
that
That's
affinity.
a great point. Yeah, because they're a huge part of how your brand is perceived, is what they're hearing from other folks. And so, no, it's really important.
Yeah. One other thing I think is interesting, and when I first heard your research, when you first presented to us here at Inverta, gosh, it's been over a month now, I think, since we talked to you. But um, one of the things that really stood out to me initially was, wow, this really changes not just the marketing stuff that we've talked about, but it also changes that BDR, SDR function.
Yeah,
They're so I mean, that team is incentivized by booking meetings, right? And
yeah,
Um, sometimes that's all it is. It doesn't even matter if the meeting happens or not, but it's like book a meeting, book a meeting, book a meeting. And what you're saying and what we're hearing and through the research is like that doesn't matter anymore, right? Like
yeah,
they're the pigeon sort of just like getting lucky. Maybe sometimes that they're getting the meeting. So how does that change that role or that function? You
yeah,
talked a little bit about the bots, but like, what should we be doing instead?
yeah. It does. And so, yeah. So I think, first of all, we're not changing the timing of when buyers engage with us. So what are they going to be doing? Um, One, I think there is, especially in I wouldn't say at the smaller end of the accounts, because I don't think anybody can afford it, but enterprise accounts, strategic kind of size accounts, making sure that you're out enabling those buyers, building relationships, not waiting for people in the buying groups to come to you to look for something, but making sure that you're delivering it to them. Again, some of that can be automated, but if you really want to, larger accounts, you don't want to do that. And I think you do want to, reach out with an actual human being focused on enabling the buyer and not on just getting the meeting. So I think about um, this way. So, your buyers, they mostly know who you are day one of their buying journey. So they're probably going to be on there, when they start doing research, your website is going to be one of the places they come. Um, if you have a form and they have to fill it out, they're probably going to become an MQL for you. And that's probably going to happen in the first week of their buying journey. So if you send a BDR after them and that BDR is just tasked with getting a meeting, they're going to fail almost all the time. 80, more than 80% of the time, they're going to fail not because the lead is not good, and not because they're not in market, but because the timing isn't right and they don't want to talk to you yet. And that happens, you can have that going for 5 or 6 months. The people from that account can be coming to your website and becoming MQLs, and all of those leads will become disqualified because the timing is not right and they don't want to talk to you yet. So focusing those BDRs instead on, what if you've got leads from people from accounts that are in market, you've been watching, you have sixth sense, you know that they're in market, they're deep in that. Then I think absolutely fine. Reach out to them, make yourself available for a meeting, multi-thread, make sure you're building your understanding of who's in the buying group and all of that. And make yourself available because they're in and around the window where they're going to talk to you, and make it easy. make yourself friendly, available, and all of that stuff. That's fine. Just leave the ones that are early in buying journeys alone. Just enable them at most. If you've got invitations, like for us, for a strategic account, here's an account we think is in market. We look up to see their CMOs not part of CMO Coffee Talk. We're going to we're going to have a human being make a phone call and deliver an invitation to Coffee Talk, and then deliver the link and all of that stuff. And that's going to be like concierge service. You get that, right? But you can't do that for everybody. You can't have that level of service for everybody. So figure out where you can and spend your resource doing that kind of thing that's really going to build preference for your brand, and stop spending it chasing all of the people who will not talk to you now, either because they're not in market or because it's very early. Stop chasing them. They hate it. You hate it. It doesn't work. Just stop doing that. You don't need to do that anymore. And then, the compensation thing, getting paid for meetings, it's, even if you can talk somebody into having a meeting with you, it's not going to change what their company buys just because you got there.
Sure.
Likely if they, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it also, not just the compensation piece, but it changes the skill set of that individual too, right? Typically a BDR or SDRs are more green, more, junior salespeople, right? That's kind of where you start them and then you move them up in the organization. Yeah. And what you're saying is that may not be the right place to put those people, and it just changes that entire model.
It does. Yeah. I think they've got to be thinking more like a concierge for your company. We should be thinking of them that way. Like this is now a company that has moved into the realm in which we envelop them in our best brand experience. And what does that look and feel like for them? How do we make that as convincing as possible without, and convincing as possible means not pitching rather than pitching,
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, Kerry, this is all great. And we're going to wrap. But one thing we like to ask our guests is, it's like pro tip time. So what is one thing that you as the pro would give a tip to our listeners? Like one thing they can go do tomorrow to start moving down a path of changing the way we think about approaching this new in B2B journey?
So I'll go something that I've mentioned earlier, but this was what really sent me down this path about 7 years ago with my buddy Terry Flaherty back at Serious Decisions. We were looking at our clients' lead data, and what was really obvious was this discrepancy between the way we measure it and the way it actually is. That we measure it like one lead equals one selling opportunity. So getting 1 out of 10 is a 10% conversion rate. And then when you realize that it's nothing like that, it's not even close to that. Then you can't allow yourself to be measured that way anymore, right? You're just going to take that and show whoever thinks they're going to measure you that way and say, no, maybe what we can do is every month we can look at the number of unique selling opportunities. And then we can talk about how we converted those unique selling opportunities. Cause now I'm going to start, if I'm looking at that, now I'm looking at, well, here's a selling opportunity that's got 3 people attached to it instead of 1. Can we focus on that one, please? Right. And now you're already you're headed down the right path with that already based on your own data. So don't just take my word for it, but look at your own data, see what that looks like. If you have website de-anonymization, then add that to the mix. And that also tells you, okay, you've got this many people coming from those accounts. There it starts to already get, complicated because, what's better, 1 lead and 10 anonymous people or 2 leads and 5? Now you start to get into this and there's, I don't want anybody going down the route of trying to do, lead scoring on that or something, but it's good to see. Right. The other kind of corollary to that is take a set of opportunities that, say got to, late pipeline stage, at least last quarter, and then look back in time at your leads to see, did the ones that get further or that closed, did they have more people? If you've got, 100 accounts that showed up with some activity, did they differ in how much engagement you had earlier on? So you can start looking at that just to build that really clear case in your head, not in your head, but on paper, about what it actually looks like when buyers are buying from us. And are the things that we're doing aligned to that? Because the answer is going to be no. Right? If you're not already doing this stuff, the answer is going to be no. What we're doing is aligned to a world in which one lead equals one selling opportunity, and that's all there is to it. And, even, like one of the big ahas a while back was even accounts that are doing ABM. Like, so if you've already got an ABM program, and chances are you do, this is even a more urgent issue for you. Because if you're doing an ABM program, what that means by definition is you've got a set of accounts where you're concentrating effort. And where you concentrate effort, unless you suck at it, you're going to produce more people coming to engage with you, right?
Yep.
Do you have a mechanism for noticing and taking action when that happens? If what you're doing is you're still looking for MQLs, the answer is going to be no, right? And that's what we see time after time as an analyst was they're doing ABM, but they're measuring MQLs. And so all of the work that they're doing to get 10 people to engage instead of one is missed. It's like completely over their heads. Now, some of those accounts are going to end up buying anyway because you got them engaged and they wanted to buy. So that's fine, right? But you'll never know why, and you won't get credit for it. And so you won't do the things that caused it next time around.
That's right.
So that's what I would do.
That's awesome. Well, Kerry, thank you so much. One, for being a guest on the podcast. Two, for just the insights that you bring to our profession and the work that you do behind the scenes to do all the research. I know it's not an easy task, and it just is something that we continue to look forward to it, year over year of what we'll see coming out of the work you're doing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for being a guest, and we'll have you back soon, I'm sure, or a year from now, and talk about, hey, what are we seeing differently than we did this year? So thanks so much, Kerry.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the RevRoom today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. For more, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Don't forget to follow Inverta on LinkedIn for more updates and exclusive content. That's Inverta, INVERTA. Have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep innovating and driving that revenue growth. See you next time.